Sir. Dr. Balakrishna is the Director of the Center of Law and Development and an Associate Professor teaching at the National University of Advanced Legal Studies at Kochi. His areas of interest include jurisprudence, international and criminal law. He continues to explore the impact of international norms on municipal law, which was his area of doctoral study. One of his doctoral candidates is currently working on extent of inclusivity of person with a disability in democratic processes. He has held various academic and administrative positions across institutions, also bringing his prior experience gained from litigation, which he indulged in during his stint in legal profession. He made contribution through research and publications apart from those in seminars and conference in resource person. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. At the outset, I would like to place on record my gratitude for the opportunity given to me by the Election Commission Kerala, Kausigan sir, Saji sir, other dignitaries, participants, online, offline. Afternoons are tough. As an audience, I'll try to keep myself interesting so as to keep you awake. We have been discussing right from the morning with regard to the technology part of how to make elections serve the purpose that they are supposed to serve. When we look at technology, we are oriented in a scientific manner, factual manner, provable manner. That's how we understand science, is it not? Something that can be tested and proved and satisfies the urge to find acceptability. When you throw in law into it, what we are asking for is legitimacy. Every process that you introduce, every component that you introduce into an existing system must ultimately meet the standards of legitimacy. Now, this legitimacy that we talk about can be formal legitimacy, where we talked about how you must have a legislative architecture, framework within which the processes function, so that you say that this is something which has to be accepted as the final result because the law prescribes, requires, and mandates that it must be done in this way, and that by itself brings an element of legitimacy. But when you talk about law, law is both proactive as well as reactive. When you are introducing technology, you need to bring in the legal framework in such a manner as to enhance the legitimacy and thereby the acceptability of the process. Unlike other aspects, election has to it an element of aura that we look at in terms of legitimacy. Like right from the morning, Sajid sir was speaking, Dhaniraj was speaking, Kausigan sir was saying, how we are so easily accepting something like a UPI. And that is a higher standard sometimes that the technology has to adhere to when it comes to matters like this. Is election a universal requirement of a government's model? We just had a glimpse of Swiss model, didn't we? 8,400 elections in a year. Referendum. Can you think of referendum in India? Obviously not. So each system has its own requirements, legal structure, limitations, volume, scale. We talked about India and Brazil adopting EVM. India and Brazil, in my opinion, from one point of view, may not have adopted EVM by choice. They rather adopted it by necessity. People accepted it by virtue of the necessity of the kind of volume that they were dealing with the kind of landmass that they were dealing with, and the other kinds of challenges associated with it. And therefore, it becomes convenient, like I said about UPI, it becomes convenient for a country like India and Brazil to adopt EVM with all the stated, penumbra for debate and discussion in terms of whether it is appropriate technology or not. And that is where, coming up with a legal framework, each country should be made or given an opportunity to check what its requirements are, what its legal architecture is, and bring that legal architecture which can facilitate the adoption of an appropriate technology. How would technology influence it? Like we all know, technology can either be an enabler or a disabler. Depending upon what impact that technology, whatever technology used to adopt, depending upon how that is going to be playing a role in the ultimate purpose that we are trying to achieve, you will have to take a call. That's what each EMB, each state will have to take note of. It's ever evolving. And we know that, the law is many a times reactive. So waiting for the law, as a person of a legal background, student of law, I would prefer my law to be reactive than proactive. Sometimes being proactive becomes a dampener to technology. Sometimes it's better to be reactive. Look at the situation, let it pan out, see what the challenges are, fix it, and then the law get it crystallized. That's one way of approaching it. So it takes time. And that is where probably best practices across the different parts of the country may become an indicator to what challenges you may face when you adopt your technology. It's an indicator. It's not decisive, because your society, your context is probably different from the context in which it was adopted successfully. Legitimacy, as I said, is absolute must. We are driven by rule of law, rule by law. And you need to understand that this legitimacy is brought either by constitutional or statutory, or at least at a policy level. Now, while I was discussing with Mr. Rajesh earlier, I said that not everything needs to be at a statutory level or a constitutional level. Sometimes it can be left at a policy level, because policy level gives you the flexibility to adopt newer technology without going through it, because lawmaking is a cumbersome process. And when technology is moving at a very fast pace, sometimes the law which is made may become, as I said earlier, may become a hurdle. So lawmaking is even otherwise done in a general term, never going specific many times. So that framework must be there. That must be an enabler, and that should enable even newer technologies to be adoptable as and when and the context in which it is being applied with its traditional legal framework, and within that traditional legal framework, how this can be adopted. We can give a choice of standards, but which is the most appropriate technology appropriate to the legal system is to be chosen by the EMB concerned. Why so? Because like we saw the stages that we had discussed earlier in the morning, in different stages, different stakeholders come in, and different stakeholders have different ends to meet. different purposes that they are trying to achieve. Take, for example, a voter registration stage. You have enough wider window, where even if something wrong happens because of an adoption of a certain technology, there is a chance for rectification. The window is wide enough. But if we are talking about technology on the voting day, that window is a day window. You have no chance of rectification there. And one or a couple of flaws or mistakes can even throw a shadow on the entire process. So there, when we adopt technology, probably the standards that were comparatively lower in a pre-election stage or a pro-election stage, as a post-election stage, may not be the same that can be adopted for the election day. Election day requires a higher degree of what we call as legitimacy, transparency, trustworthiness for the technology to be adopted on the day of election. So we are looking at different standards for different stages. And all this, what are we doing for? This would go for the purpose of legitimizing the process of election. Why is that election should be legitimized? Because you require public confidence. And that public confidence many a times is based on perception, mind you. Genuine and many a times not so genuine. But that has to be catered to. And that is where the law comes in. And add to that the fact as to how, if this technology gives also an opportunity for a dispute to be raised, there should be an appropriate method of this resolution of this dispute. That's why judges come in. When we teach, let's say, a subject like contract, as a commoner, we know we enter into contracts, right? So when we are writing, let's say, an agreement, what we tell is that, look here, you write your agreement in such a way that you imagine that this contract is going to end up in the court on some day. How is the court going to look at the contract and read it and interpret it? That's what you're preparing for today. In the same way, when you're adopting your law and bringing your technology, you have to factor in that there is bound to be disputes, and these disputes need to be resolved. So on the day that this particular dispute reaches the court, how is the court going to respond to it? So you're not just trying to satisfy the stakeholders' expectations, you're also trying to satisfy the expectation of the particular court to which it ends up. When I say court, it need not be a regular court of law. There are many countries where there are tribunals, parallel quasi-judicial systems where electoral disputes are resolved. All I'm talking about is a dispute resolution mechanism, which may be a court, which may be a court of law, or which may be some other body where these disputes are taken and resolved. But the point is that when the matter reaches there, how would a technology which was put to test and put to application, how would it stand the judicial scrutiny there? You're preparing for that. And so all the steps and practices and best practices that you're trying to be talking about has to be factoring in that day when a dispute arises, and that dispute needs to be resolved, whichever way it is resolved. But for resolving that, there should be enough verifiable evidence which can be the basis for the resolution of that dispute. When you look at the global trends and patterns, we talked about I-voting, e-voting, etc., which is a possibility. In this era of migration, probably that may become a necessity tomorrow. Kerala is the best example of that. If elections happen in some states in North India, the entire labor population from here suddenly goes home. I'm sure that we have that kind of a situation in the recent past. And then every single project here, mind you, every single project here gets delayed. Why? Because the population, the migrant population that was here, labor population, suddenly went home to vote. And when a population goes home to vote, it's generally 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or a month. Right? So economic necessity also is something which may bring the necessity to bring in this kind of a participation, even a remote participation tomorrow. Some foreign countries have adopted that because their population has spread out across the world, and therefore for them to give legitimacy to their governance process there, they want their citizens abroad also to participate, and in such a situation they would resort to other methods of remote voting, be it postal or technology enabled. They do that. So it is many a times the changes that are happening around you, migration, reverse migration, a serious issue. Today, tomorrow it's going to be a greater issue, which means technology is going to be called into service at a more appropriate way because of necessity, convenience. And when necessity and convenience come together, maybe legitimacy and the standards we may be willing to be a little more flexible on that. Right? Elections are a very high-risk activity. Additional factors such as political, cultural, and social issues can prevail over technological ones. That's the biggest challenge as far as law is concerned. Because it's not that your credibility of the technology which is in question, but there are so many other factors which pushes people to challenge technology. How do you, can technology address everything like that? No, it cannot. And so there is a cultural context in which this technology is being applied, and therefore an election management body has to be aware of that. It has to be conscious to that fact that yes, you are going to be applying it in a certain context. Local physical environment and infrastructure needs to be considered. Territoriality gets blurred. This is where we talked about how migrant populations can. Physical presence, as long as it is not necessary, territoriality becomes irrelevant. In the context of, we had a reference to that by Dr. Dhanraj, where we talked about how in campaign, misinformation, disinformation, obviously he used two words there, free and fair. Fair election is not just election on the election day. Fair election starts right from the day nominations start. Campaigning goes on. Voting happens. Right? Till that day, everything has to be free and fair. The counting and the declaration of results, everything has to be fair. And that fairness is not just the duty or obligation of the EMB. Fairness is also duty of every participant in that election. And so when a political party or a candidate indulges in activities which are probably in an example, say, of deviation from the model code, you could have technology, which could be fencing what is applicable, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate, and even going to the extent of disqualifying a person. But of course, you need legal backing for that. Technology can be an enabler there also. There are other elements there. Trust deficit. Trust deficit is natural. Some people genuinely don't trust, and some are artificial. You probably cannot address all as such. And of course, you have social media, and social media, I don't have to go to that area. We are all familiar with what happens there. Civil society engagement. I think that's where people like Dhanraj comes in. You know, where civil society, they do hold a lot of command over public opinion. And as I told you, it's a perception war. And in this perception war, bringing technology and the stakeholders in technology alone may not be sufficient. You need to have the entire ecosystem being readied for the adoption of that technology. I think that is where the challenge is going to lie. And of course, technically speaking, quantum resistant encryption, yeah, I'm not going into those, but these were identified as some challenges which are there. Other kinds of, we talk about illiteracy, digital illiteracy or digital divide, which is there. Data consumption inequality. That again, you know, there are so many things which are variables which are at play with regard to ensuring a free and fair election to be there, to be ensured. You need to have a legal architecture. What is the legal architecture? I think that's where people like Shanmugam and me find the challenge. We cannot come up with a uniform, universal legal architecture which can be universally adopted. Not at all possible. And that is why all we can say is that each EMB, depending upon which country we are talking about, depending upon their legal culture, their constitutional culture, their social culture, will have to decide what is the appropriate legal framework that should be there supporting their EMB. Legal culture, legal framework brings legitimacy. At least gives you a prima facie legitimacy. Then of course subject to challenge, everything is subject to challenge in a court, that's a different aspect. It has to be states. I think this part was discussed earlier also as to how we have, you know, the report does deal with it in pre-poll, voting day and the post-poll stages which are there, and technologies may differ as such. As I said earlier, sometimes it is good for the law to be there and then you adopt technology. But sometimes it is good to allow the technology to be put in play, with certain quasi-legislative framework, that's where policy comes in, see how it plays around, and then allow the law to crystallize. That is one way of. So looking for a legal framework at the outset may not be most appropriate for adoption of technology which is evolving. Or if at all you have a law, make the law as generally worded so that even changes in technology in future can be adopted. Now that's where the challenge lies. How do you come up with that? The other one is, as I told you earlier, imagine that every technology is to be questioned in a court of law tomorrow or any dispute resolution mechanism tomorrow. Be ready for that. So the technology that you are introducing today should satisfy how the courts are going to respond to it, are going to look at it, and what the courts are going to be demanding in order to bestow an element of justice, legitimacy onto that. Be ready for that. That's something which again is situation specific. Not all courts take the same set of standards. It differs from courts to court. And it's a local flavor which determines how the courts generally respond to these kinds of situations. Well, this is how I've picked it from electionjudgments.org. This is how some of the lessons in terms of use of technology in election judgments have reflected. There's a lack of trust in election process. There has to be a maximum transparency of the election management body around introduction, testing, and use of technology. Brazil, for example, what we saw was that it makes the technology available for public view. I don't know the technicalities of it, but I also read that the source code is made available so that people can legitimately challenge it, if necessary, find the bugs, bring it to the notice, and this testing is done almost 1 year before the date of election, so that that technology, after it is being put to a public test and after getting those challenges addressed, can be put for election process. Do the countries have the resources to do that, have the technology to do that, make these things available for public and testing by public, members of the public as well as other stakeholders, technical experts, everything? That's one way of doing it. Can every country do that? Maybe that just can be thought about. Courts or tribunals should maximize transparency in election dispute resolution proceedings. Not just election dispute resolution also must be transparent. So courts must also be fair in terms of what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. They should be clear about that. The election observers, many a times the legitimacy of the election is determined by the election observers, both domestic as well as international. Make sure that they are also conversant with what technology is being used. Court procedures and other things must be in accordance with these standards that are legitimizing the process. Transparency in code and procurement process. Technology again. A physical vote record is important to enable auditability of electronic voting technology, VVPAT. Right? So, all said and done, physical must be there. Now, that is like, a kind of redundancy which we are talking about. So, these are all experiences from or lessons from different judgments across the world. While best practices may be identified and such for replication, it should be done only in comparable scenarios. Challenge. It should be done only in comparable scenarios. Resource availability, stakeholder capacities, inclusiveness, accountability may have to be kept in focus. Differs from situation to situation, context to context. Cultural ethos. Right from the beginning, I've been mentioning this. And I, in fact, used a phrase, constitutional culture. They're different from country to country. Right? And that is something which should be kept in mind. And as I said, technology should look at what is the already adjudicated and accepted judicial standards. What happened in Germany with regard to adoption of technology happened in 2009. They have not been able to get over that in 2026 also. So that is something, once a judiciary has taken a position, it will be better for you to align with what the position has been. Now that's for the legal pundits of each country to think about what their judicial context requires. The election management body may be required to assess the nature and extent of technology adoption suited to their role within their legal architecture. The stakeholders, the ones who are participating in this, how much are they prepared for assimilating the technology? What is the relevant technology? Again, we had a bouquet, as Sir put it, available there for you. It should be tailored to local conditions, both legal conditions, cultural, social conditions that are there. And the ultimate purpose is to strengthen trust, transparency, and coordination. Standards of technology, as those in technology know, are hard to crystallize. And you're asking for a legal structure for something which is already fluid. Right? So that is a challenge as such. It cannot be time immune. It changes. Technology changes faster. So how is the law going to adapt to it? That's why I said sometimes it is better to have it in a fluid form. Law may have to catch up fast. Some areas, as I keep saying, is better left to the area of realm of policy. Public trust is the guiding light. The trust element must be sustained. There has to be a regular engagement with stakeholders. Communication is what is an absolute must. Transparency is brought out by communication. And the emerging technologies as such is something which should be adopted and should be tested for future adoption. Whether we like it or not, technology is here to stay. And they will contribute to all aspects of human transaction, including elections. Is it a disruptor? Yes, it's a disruptor. Disruption today, as you know, has both negative as well as positive sense to it. So take the way you want it to take it. Get the technology on a side. Adoption must be for the purpose of getting legitimate positive results. And it should serve the purpose of election. As I said, every voter being given an opportunity to vote is more important than who he voted for. Right? That is where you look at the process's legitimacy there. I may vote for a person or candidate who lost. What is important is not that the candidate lost. What is important is that I got an opportunity to vote. That is the purpose of election. That is not to find who is the winner. The purpose of election is to ensure that every eligible voter has a meaningful opportunity to make a choice, register a choice. That's the purpose of election. And the proper use of technology can increase administrative efficiency, reduce long-term costs. I think elements of this we already touched upon. Detractors are always going to be there. There has to be a legitimate degree of legitimacy to the process. And ultimately, as you know, all the disputes that are going to be there are going to end up in some dispute resolution mechanism. And that is what we call as judicial scrutiny. We should be prepared for that. What is that standard for that? Well, we can talk about the general standards, but that is on the basis of each country's specific architecture that it works on. Thank you. Any questions? We can take it, I think, after Sharman sir comes in. Sure, sir. Legitimacy of a policy is that, no, you want me to talk? In an Indian context, I would say, when you're talking in terms of policy, generally, the courts recognize the fact that this is not a law. And the policy is taken so that there is no legally binding obligation on the state to do what the policy requires. Can I use a legal term for that? Policies are non-justiciable. Meaning, if a matter is kept at the realm of policy, the government is free and has a greater degree of flexibility to adopt certain standards which it considers to be acceptable in a certain situation. They are not necessarily going to be put to the same degree of judicial scrutiny as a constitutional provision or a statutory provision would be by the court. That's why I talked in terms of policy. If it's a policy matter, generally, the courts take a hands-off policy. Because policy matters are flexible matters, not based on, not creating any statutory right or a duty. When you have a statutory right or a duty, you're bound by it in a certain direction, in a certain way. But when a matter is a policy matter, the government or the state retains an amount of flexibility in terms of its application. It cannot be claimed as a matter of right by the person who probably is a beneficiary to that. It could be adversarial.
Can he actually challenge a policy?
Which one?
Suppose a policy, based upon a policy, a person can they challenge that if it is not a beneficiary, I get adversely affected because of a policy, can they challenge? What you said
when
is,
when I use the term beneficiary, I'm using it in both ways.
Oh, good.
You, somebody who's affected by that policy. I am bringing a policy which affects you. You can go to a court of law on multiple grounds, saying that your constitutional right is violated. Courts are bound to look into that. Saying that your statutory right is violated. Court is bound to look in that. If it is based on policy, you cannot claim any constitutional statutory right. You can only claim a regular right. And when it's a matter of policy, the government retains a greater degree of flexibility because the state courts consider these not as a strict element right to be adjudicated in favor or against you. The courts will refrain from adjudicating on that matter. But the moment you give it a legitimacy by bringing it a statutory component to it, that takes it to a different degree of what you call as judicial scrutiny. For example, when we talk about economic policy or a labor policy, economic policy, for example, we started with a new economic policy. When you bring a new economic policy, nobody can go to the court and say that this thing is violating my right. It has violated so many people's right, labor rights, for example. But when it's on a policy level, the government retains its flexibility to adopt it according to the situation, demands of the situation. That's why technology, as I told you, sometimes it is better to keep it at the realm of policy rather than giving it a constitutional or a statutory basis for that. Because the moment you give a statutory or constitutional basis for that, you find that that is subject to a greater degree of judicial scrutiny and interpretation and, don't read me wrong, interference. Technology, as is sometimes a law, is sometimes a dampener to it. So if you don't want the law to be a dampener, at least in the initial stages, keep it at a policy level. Once the technology's adoption and the acceptance becomes clear, give it the statutory basis. Because by that time, transparency would have come in, trust would have come in, so there would be so many elements. For German court judgment is an example. They said technology is good. There's nothing wrong with the technology. But a common man does not understand that. And therefore it is not to be applied, not to be adopted. Now it's not because the technology is bad, but the standard there was that a common man does not understand it, make it understandable to a common man and then bring it, that will be acceptable. Now that is going to be difficult for technology. As I said, the one who is doing UPI, a transaction, does not know what is going behind it, but he is still willing to accept the benefit of it because that's convenience. And again, another legal phrase that I would bring is balance of convenience. As I said, Brazil and India adopted EVM because that's more convenient for us. The other one is so cumbersome that we would go for something which is more convenient to us. And there we attribute trustworthiness. We attribute legitimacy, and we are willing to do that to a greater degree of flexibility. Thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Balakrishnan sir, for providing such legal clarity. Striking a balance between technological innovation and legal framework is no small feat, and your precise analysis for the statutes, constitutional principles, and compliance requirements has given us a solid character, solid anchor for today's discussion, sir. Thank you. Now, I would like to invite another eminent personality joining in online mode to speak about use of AI in election administration. Ajay Kumar is Assistant Professor cum Head, School of Technology in Elections, India International Institute for Democracy and Election Management. Sir is an alumnus for University of Delhi and Banaras Hindu University. He has over 15 years of experience, which is a blend of industry, teaching and research experience. Started his career as a software developer at Newgen Software Technologies and later transitioned into academia, serving as an assistant professor in computer science at premier institutions including the University of Delhi and Central University of Himachal Pradesh, Dharamshala. His research interests include artificial intelligence with a focus on elections, blockchain technology, and unmanned aerial vehicles. Ajay sir is supervising multiple groups, including Kerala, in developing model standards and practices. He is also heading the development of global themes on AI in elections. Sir, welcome.
So thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful introduction. Good day to everyone present in hybrid mode. Am I audible? Am I audible properly?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes. Thank you. So good day to everyone present in hybrid mode, distinguished guests, Chief Electoral Officer Kerala, colleagues, and global partners in democracy. It is a great honor and privilege to address this distinguished gathering on the very much interesting topic today, navigating the AI frontier in electoral administration. I am Ajay Kumar, Assistant Professor cum Head, School of Technology and Election, IIIDEM, Election Commission of India. Before going to start, I want to one quote from Karl Popper, that is, with every solution of mankind, there comes a new problems. So when we talk about the elections, it is easy to get lost in spreadsheets, the logistics, and the law. But at its core, an election is a very human story. It is the story of a citizen stepping into a booth to have their say. Our job as administrator and partners in democracy is to make sure that a story is told fairly and accurately. Today, that story has a new character in terms of artificial intelligence. So we have moved past the era of just using basic databases. We are now at a qualitative shift in how we work. We are moving from the promise of technology to the messy real world practice of it. So my message today is simple. As we embrace these incredibly powerful tools, we must keep the human elements as our ultimate guardrail. So talking about the evolution from logic to best guesses. So for years, we have used technology as a high-powered calculator. We used to clean voter rolls, read ballots, and flag errors. That was logical AI. It follows some AI strict rules, like if A happened, then machine did B, or some simply generally in computer science or non-AI system, that rules may be followed through the logical concept in computer science. But the generative AI we see today, the chatbots and the content creators, does not follow the straight line like in non-AI systems. It is probabilistic. Instead of absolute logic, it makes best guesses based on the massive pattern it receives. So it does not just process data. It can create outreach materials in dozens of languages, or even hold empathetic conversation with voters through chatbots. This is a huge opportunity to reach people we have missed before. So, but it requires us to rethink how we trust the output. So output is very important, and trust factor in terms of elections, that is very, very important. So coming to the risk part, that is the when machine like hallucination or embedded biases. So because these systems are making statistical guesses, so they can get things wrong. Sometimes in very strange way, we call these hallucinations. Hallucinations is simply like in a terms that is very famous terms in computer science, GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. If you give a system some garbage value, that we can't expect the right result or right output. So in our world, an AI hallucination is not just a glitch, it is a potential crisis. So a chatbot giving a voter the wrong polling location can trigger legal challenges or destroy public trust. So even more concerning is embedded biases. So if the data we feed these machines does not represent everyone, like in terms of inclusiveness. We talk about the inclusiveness because in the terms of Election Commission of India, they talk no one can left to vote. So if it leaves out the youth, women or minority community, the AI will simply back those inequality into its decision. So, and because many AI systems are black boxes, we do not know the ins and outs. So we often cannot even see how it reaches a biased conclusion. So we have to be the ones to shine a light into that boxes, that black boxes. So what is the future? What is the future agents and infrastructure? We have to think apart above the AI system. So looking ahead, we are moving towards some things called agentic AI. So think of this as an AI that does not just answer a questions, but takes an action. Imagine an AI agent that notices a polling station is running low on ballots and automatically arrange a new shipment from the supplier. This is exciting, but it means we need a stronger foundation. We need a digital public infrastructure, shared, secure systems like digital IDs, and data exchange platform that work together across the whole government. So we are not just building standalone tools anymore. We are building a nation's digital ecosystem for democracy. So what are the core principles which generally keeping humans in the loop? So how do we do this right? Technology is never neutral. It reflects the people who build it. To succeed, we need three things. First is political consensus. For political consensus, making sure everyone is on board or on same page. So clarity of purpose, like solving real problems. And the last is rigorous testing. That testing is very, very important. Like you have to start in computer science or any non-AI model. Generally, we do like starting from unit test to the system testing. So I want to highlight one non-negotiable rule. Human must stay in the right place. So legal responsibilities for a person's right to vote must always remain with the human officials. So we cannot allow ourselves to simply rubber stamp what a machine suggests. We need to be trained, empowered, and ready to say no to the AI when it does not feel right. So we also need to be transparent. If you are using AI, tell the public, publish a statement, show your work. So this is very, very important for this principle in terms of elections or in terms of any AI systems. At last, in conclusion, that is a force for good. So at the end, the United Nations sees AI as a potential force for good to help us meet our global goals, but it is not only a force for good if we use it to make our elections more inclusive, more credible, and more resilient. So don't let the technology overshadow the voters. Use the machine to handle the data, but use your human judgment to protect the democracy. That is very, very important. And at the last, finally, I'm going to discuss that is the feedback which we received from the Kerala state. So IIIDEM, you already know IIIDEM has adopted a 9-step methodology for developing global best practices and international model standards to ensure that this report is firmly grounded in the perspectives, experience, and practical needs of election practitioners worldwide. And in terms of that, Kerala is adopting international model standard, that is election technology. So I found the deliverable received till to be well structured and analytically strong. It established a comprehensive framework that effectively links the legal, technical, procedural, and resilience dimension of election technology. I appreciate the integration of globally recognized standards, including NIST, IEEE, ODIHR, OSCE, International IDEA, and the Carter Center, as these strengthen the report's technical credibility and international relevance. The life cycle approach, which covers the pre-election, election day, and post-electoral phases, provides a logical and effective structure for organizing the analysis, and creates a solid foundation for future case studies. So the inclusion of emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, blockchain, cryptography, and risk limiting audits also gives the study a strong forward-looking perspective. From a structural perspective, I consider a few chapters to be the core sections of the Step 3 document, while the material presented in the remaining chapters can be effectively utilized in subsequent deliverables. I also acknowledge that deliverables 2 and 3 have been completed, and I look forward to receiving deliverable 5 and 6 within the week. My remaining comments primarily focus on improving clarity, consistency, and technical precision rather than suggesting changes to the core content or methodology. Overall, I believe the report has a strong analytical foundation. The recommended revisions are intended to further enhance its quality, readability, and overall presentation. I expect to receive the first half of the final thematic report by the end of this month. I am confident that after carefully addressing the feedback provided and making effective use of the IIIDEM guidance note and report template, the final report will be of a very high standards. So thank you for everything you do.
Thank you, Ajay Kumar sir, for sharing your valuable thoughts. It will be incorporated into the reports. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Let's step back into the legal aspects again. Advocate Shanmugan D. Jain will enlighten us through lens of practitioner. Shanmugan D. Jain is an advocate practicing High Court of Kerala, Kochi, holding a BSc Physics along with an LLB and LLM from Cochin University of Science and Technology. He specializes in the intersection of law, emerging technologies and public policy. Advocate Jain is an author and scholar, having written the book Electronic Signature, Legal and Technical Perspective, and contributed to Blockchain Industry 4.0. His academic contributions span publication on blockchain technology, the Internet of Things, tax law, constitutional issues, and intellectual property. He has presented his research globally, including at the Tax Research Network Conference in the UK and the South Asian Postgraduate Law Conference. He has served as a guest and adjunct faculty member at institutions including National University of Advanced Legal Studies, the Inter-University Center for Intellectual Property Rights Studies, and CUSAT, teaching courses in taxation, jurisprudence, constitutional law, and information technology law. So please welcome.
ഇതാക്കണം. Election can be as simple as a set of mature people assembling in a hall and showing their hands and doing an election process. See, this is the most personal way of conduct of election. But that is not possible on a large scale. This is the initial phase or the most elementary manner. It can also extend to a situation wherein a microchip is placed within your body, or a microchip or something is possible to identify what you think and predict an election.
So basically, anything that is converting the personal element to something else is a technology. So even the election by ballot paper is also a technology, because there is this process of paper being used, and it requires a legal structure. As Balars sir rightly pointed out, our concern is always that, or our thought is always that everything will end up in court. There is no perfect legal solution. See, when I say if you kill someone, you will get this penalty or this punishment, I presuppose he will do that. If I am certain that he will not do, there is no requirement for a punishment. Say, for example, I am giving a cake to Balar sir and saying that it needs to be shared between him and his wife. And I am also devising a technique which I says that, sir, you can cut it, but first piece will be taken by his wife. Now this is a perfect solution. He will cut it perfectly half. He will never cut it in a different way. But such solutions does not exist. That is the pathetic situation. Now, see, a technology is supposed to be used for the election process, and the reasons for that we have already discussed. So, as a lawyer, my concern is when such a technology is put into practice, what are the things which are kept to be in mind? And I will rush through this. So, it starts from the enrollment process, right? Now, this enrollment process which is having a wider perspective. Say, for example, a particular person is born. His birth is registered. It can be the trigger for enrollment in the electoral roll. Or it can be a notice issued by the body which is conducting the election for inviting application or something like that. So, whatever it may be, should be a notice, or there should be a system in place which gives you the opportunity to opt for that. And to be in an inclusive manner, this notice should be issued in multiple means, not only electronic means, any possible means, right? Now, what should be the process of including it? Here also, law expect an inclusive manner so that it need not be alone biometric. The thing is that convenience can make so many technologies bring in. But at the same time, there should be some fallback, which may be available to a limited person. Say, for example, you might be finding that there is a stair which is lengthy there, but at the same time, there is a ramp. So, the large majority of population, this will serve, but for the other category, this is required. So, there should be a mechanism which is biometric, convenient, very easy, efficient, but at the same time, it should have a fallback mechanism, right? The main criteria is that the physical condition of a person should not come in the way of his enrollment getting defeated, right? Now, the third thing is that in this process, the most efficient or the effective thing is collection of biometric data. And of course, it will result in personal data otherwise also. Now, the element of so-called data protection requires that this collection should be done in a secure manner. It should be only on a need basis, things like that. So this aspect need to be ensured at the collection of, at the enrollment stage, right? Now, that 3 points are the major one, which is legality, necessity, and proportionality, right? Then comes the concept known as a proper hearing. This needs to be publicized. Then there should be an opportunity for anyone to counter it. A proper hearing should be done. Now, if this process is completed in this way, the chances of an issue reaching the court, it is always there. When you are interested in litigation, it will reach court. But the court giving a verdict which is going against the body is very less, right? Now, Now, how to become a candidate? Now, this candidate element also, presently what I find is that there is a process of giving the application, there is a process of scrutinizing it, there is a process of rejecting it, and after rejection, there is a pandemonium. You see, this can be avoided, provided a technology is there in place. At the same time, the legal system is making sure that it is done in a proper way. Because just like any application to or something, when you make it in a digitally proper environment, the chances of rejection is very less. Because the technicalities are served perfectly. So in the case of candidacy also, this can be done. Now, here also, how this candidate make the application? What I feel is that considering the larger legal framework and the technological infirmities, it should be done in a controlled environment. When I say controlled environment, I am expecting that it needs to be done in a government-controlled environment. It need not be never done from my laptop or something like that as we do the application for an exam. Now, coming to the election process. Here, as Balaji sir rightly pointed out, this is the most crucial one because the margin of error is almost zero. You make an error, there is no scope for correcting it, right? So here also it should be inclusive, right? And inclusive in the sense that every automated thing should be made sure that the physical incapability is not affecting it, right? And this physical incapability, it is so wide that suppose a person who is very much low in height, the bench on which or the stool on which the EVM is kept may not be beyond its reach. So even that specificity should be addressed. Everyone should be included, right? Now, again, open to public scrutiny. Now, I have specifically avoided the German concept. It should be independently verifiable by the citizens. Now, the standard of that capacity of that citizen, you see, it need not be that of the common man. There is an expected standard. So when I am signing a paper, the legal assumption is that I have read it. Like that, there should be an expected standard. And everyone is expected to reach to that standard. It is not a question of whether the entire population is capable of doing it. That is a different story. And things will not function in it, right? Now, one major point which I find is that anyone who is flagging an issue with the electoral process, I think there are provisions which create a chilling effect on him. What I suggest is that anyone finding a fault with anything, the machine or the process, and he is flagging it, should never be made any liability or should never be proceeded against, provided he is not having a guilty intention. What I suggest is that the guilty intention need to be proved by the system to proceed against him. Just like a person who is doing a public duty, the presumption is that he has done that public duty in utter confidence, right? Or he has done it in proper way. If you question it, you need to bring in the element of so-called guilty intention, right? Now, the ballot secrecy and verifiability. There is a paradox here because if you ensure a verifiability is existing throughout, you are going against secret ballot. So the verifiability should be only available to the person who is voting. That is how this VVPAT works. So when I am doing a vote, I can get a confirmation, and once that confirmation is received by me, it should go to the common pool. So it is as simple as that. Best example is Three Idiots movie. You remember that these people delayed in returning the exam sheets. What they did was, they is asking the professor, do you know my name? Things like that, and they are putting it in between and running away. So it has merged with the commons. Just like that, the verifiability will be limited to that. Now, the point we noted is that there are chances of a process getting questioned because someone voted by impersonating, or there is a dead man's vote that has come in. You see, that should not be an excuse for ensuring a verifiability through the entire process. That was a system failure because the system failed in identifying the impersonating person. It should be overcome by correcting the system, and it is an exception. That exception should not be a ground for bringing in a continuous verifiability. Right? Now, what law is, and mind you, the remote voting concept. The remote voting concept, I feel, is that it is too difficult to manage. Because you can have lots of, checking, cryptography, encryption, things like that. But on my mobile end, everything ends. Because this is vulnerable to any manipulation at the entry point. And that manipulation can only be avoided provided it is done in a controlled environment. And if you want to be more inclusive and bring in remote voting, it will actually defeat the entire process. So what I feel is that as of now, we don't have a legal structure, or we don't have a technology which is satisfying the legal requirement. So this need to be weighted. That is what I feel, right? Now, basically, before a judge, there are very limited elements. I have mentioned that there should be a statutory procedure which should be adhered, right? And if there is a machine involved, if it can be a machine in actual machine form, or it can be a ballot box, there should be a chain of custody which is legitimized, right? Then there at times there is a need for auditability, auditing that can also be ensured, right? So, mind you, all machines are prone to make mistake. Not only machine, my finger can also make a mistake. At the last point when I'm pressing the button or putting it, I can be having a shivering and it can go somewhere else. Like that, all the machines can make mistake. And individual mistakes are never a problem with respect to court. But a procedure which is flawed is a big issue. So everything should be done in a clear procedure format, and it should be followed by the personnel involved. Now, these are certain general points, right? What I feel is that as far as possible, things should be enacted. When I say enacted, there should be limited scope for the executive or the rule-making authority to make something. Because any chance of discretion, exercise of unfettered discretion, may get defeated before the court of law. So as far as possible, if everything is laid down in strict format, there are high chances of no legal issues getting evolved, right? Now, the second point, it is very important. At every stage, the other side needs to be heard. So that is very much present in the enrollment stage. It should be there with respect to if someone is contesting some vote. The process of hearing the other side should be there because court appreciates that, right? Now, whatever be the process, this process should be properly documented. And that process, that documented thing should be verifiable. Now, with respect to this, just keep in mind, the process can be electronic, at the same time it can be verifiable, right? Because even though it is election-related law, which is governing elections, with respect to electronic record, the relevant enactment is Information Technology Act, which is prescribing that anything that is done electronically is equally applicable. I mean, anything that required to be run in written form is equally applicable in the case of electronic form. So it is having certain standards which need to be adhered to, right? Now, the fourth point is, I have put a question mark. Because at the stage of verifying a machine or things like that, there can be a code or something, source code or something like that, which may be proprietary. or which may be trade secret. But the review of that might be a requirement for verification. So the way out is make sure that any software component or any hardware component which is used by the government are either created by the government or government gets all the rights over it. But I am still doubtful whether it is possible. That is how I have put a question mark there. Then, if that is not possible, the other thing should definitely be there. That is the scope of ensuring an integrity in the entire hardware chain, whatever it may be, right? And in addition, there should be a mechanism for auditing everything, right? So, and further, all the machinery, everything should be handled in a transparent and a procedure-driven manner. So these three things, if the other point is not possible, these three things are to be there, right? The supply chain should be ensured, the machinery should be handled in a procedure-driven manner, there should be an auditing mechanism, right? Now, as I already mentioned, with respect to remote voting, there is, whatever be the technology that you are providing, it is prone to legal challenge because there is no verification process, right? The controlled environment can only ensure the present status of legal verification, right? So I think I have finished the point that I wanted to discuss. If there are any questions, I will take it. Any question? Right? Thank you.
I want to extend our heartfelt gratitude for your exceptional presentation on legal aspects of application and technology in elections, sir. Thank you. Let's move into panel discussion. reflections and way forward. The eminent dignitary reflections and way forward. The eminent dignitaries are requested to share their thoughts on how we can improve the current study and integrate with the next phase of study. I would like to invite Dr. Nishma Radhakrishnan to orchestrate the crucial step. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening, all. So this reflection session is actually meant to draw upon the collective wisdom and diverse experiences in this room to validate the findings and strengthen the proposed model standards. So from the comparative analysis, international review, we have actually 5 key outputs. First one is the emerging patterns from international practice. Second one, the operational enablers and barriers. Then universal principles. Then transferability of international practices and draft standards components catalog. In the briefing note it is given, you can just go through that. So now we would like to invite your reflections on these outputs. In particular, like, do these findings resonate with your experience as researchers and practitioners? Have we missed any important issues, lessons or considerations that should be reflected? Are there any findings or proposed standards that you would recommend strengthening, modifying or reconsidering in these? Then what additional inputs will help make the model standards more practical and relevant and useful for the EMBs? And also another thing is, from the talks, one of the cross-cutting considerations identified in the study is inclusivity, that is not specifically mentioned in that briefing note. While accessibility for persons with disabilities has been discussed by Shanmugam sir and all, are there other dimensions of inclusivity that you believe should be explicitly reflected in the model standards? For example, the needs of senior citizens, linguistic minorities, remote communities, or people with limited digital literacy. So these are all the points we are focusing on this session. Okay, so we can start it.
Gave me an option to sit there and speak. Who am I looking at sitting there? I think we have one more theme from Tripura who's doing on technology, right? One more theme on technology. So one of the things that we need to ensure is that we align with at the end of the day, we're going to have a consolidated report as such. And so it may be better for us to find out what exactly is the alignment with them in terms of technology-related aspects that they are suggesting. We are not going specific into any particular specific advice onto that. But as I said, internationally there are certain standards which are given there. Now, those international standards are given in a very, very general way, right? For example, when you talk about election or participation in governance, election is essentially supposed to ensure that. We ensure that this is something which is put at the status of a human right. As a human being, you are independent, an individual, you are a person who has got all the liberties at your disposal. Through an election, what you're doing is that you are allowing someone else to be able to dictate what you should or should not do. You're allowing somebody else to rule you. And that is why that sort of legitimacy is required. And that is where elements like inclusiveness, elements like participation, elements like not even a single person being denied the opportunity of being able to cast the vote becomes so important. Because it is not the end result which matters. As they say, The ends is not the important one that it is. The means that is employed to reach that end in finding who should rule us. That is what ensures the legitimacy there at one level. And it is in order to achieve that particular standard that we are trying to put, to borrow from what was said earlier, we are trying to put certain processes in place which brings that element of legitimacy and therefore our willingness to be governed. We are participating in governance, willingness to be governed, willingness to be ruled. And that is where the element of inclusiveness comes generally and specifically to those who are incapacitated. For those who are incapacitated, some of them was pointed out as such, as you know, in terms of those who are disabled, or for that matter, you know, senior citizens, or literacy-wise challenged, or other kinds of what we call as limitations that would be there. So a genuine system should be something which gives an equal opportunity to everybody, irrespective of their capacities and incapacities. And that is where the processes must ensure that this is done. As I told you, once that opportunity is given, whether somebody takes that opportunity or not does not matter. The more important matter is that that opportunity is meaningfully made available. Now, when I say use the term meaningfully, it just means that, you know, having an opportunity is not enough. It should be meaningfully available. Somebody should be able to come and cast, like we talk about in terms of guidance being given, in terms of how to go about using the technology. We know how in elections sometimes, you know, when people walk in to cast their vote, they don't know where to press, what button to press on. Not that we go and press it for them, but we do enable them to understand as to what the process is. And that making them capacitated at that moment, making them capacitated to be able to register their vote. Now, this is done with the help of technology, and the technology is supposed to enable that. And that is where that gap will be bridged. That is where the element of legitimacy would come in. That is where the element of trust would come in. As I said, when you go to court, generally what we say is, you know, when I go to court as a litigant, I may win, I may lose. If I win, happy. But if I lose, I should at least walk out of the courtroom having a feeling that I got my chance. I got my chance to present my case. There was somebody willing to listen to me. Maybe for other reasons I lost, but I lost after getting an opportunity. Now, that is how the element of legitimacy comes in. That is the element of participation comes in. That is the element of confidence, transparency, and your trustworthiness comes in. And because we are talking about governance, because we are talking about government, because we are talking about somebody who is going to be ruling us, these are an absolute must at an individual level to be satisfied. And that satisfaction is what the technology must enable. This is something which the technology enablers must keep in mind. Now, as I told you, as a technology enabler, I may be 100% confident about the sanctity of the system that I am projecting. But the sanctity of the system I am projecting has to meet some other standards which are there. How far am I adhering to that? How far am I able to convince others that I am adhering to that? Now, that is also equally important. It is not just enough that I make a good argument. It is also important that the argument that I am making is understandable to them. Because that part is what brings legitimacy to my argument. My argument by itself, how much of a good, great, exceptional it might be, it might stand as an argument without anybody accepting it. Acceptance is that important part when it comes to technology. Once that acceptance comes in, now I did tell you that, you know, we look up to the judiciary. Now, there are two ways in which judiciary functions. Judiciary creates a public opinion in the sense that, let's say you bring a technology to the judiciary and judiciary gives it a stamp of approval. The moment the judiciary gives a stamp of approval, it influences public opinion. It influences public opinion in the sense that if the judiciary has found something right in it, there is something in it to be followed, adhered to, trusted, and therefore let us trust it. Because I don't know about it. Judiciary has said it is good, so let us trust it. That's one way of doing that. The second way of doing that, you create a public opinion that judiciary, after all, the judiciary is also not an expert in technology. So when there is so much of public opinion floating around with regard to a certain technology, judiciary can do one of two things. One, it can reject that technology, or it can take a hands-off policy. It can say that we don't know, we are not touching it. We don't know about it. But that is what judiciary cannot do if a dispute reaches at its doorstep. Judiciary has to take a call. And sometimes public opinion guides the decisions. That's not how it should be. That is not how it should be. The decisions must be taken. Judiciary must be taking its decisions on the basis of evidence made available by the scientific community. But public opinion does matter. Perception does matter. And that is where many a times, many a times we do, wonder how American elections can go this way. Is it not? Many of us have wondered, how could American elections go this way? But that is how perceptions are. That is how people are. That's how the particular, individual voter is. It is not your thinking or my thinking. It's a popular thinking that we are talking about. And that popular thinking is what creates perception. And that perception also needs to be addressed. And as I told you, as a commoner, I may be more worried about my convenience. We talked about UPI as such, and therefore, technology also, the moment you are able to show convenience to the people with a minimal amount of risk, there is no situation of no risk. Shanmohan sir was just saying that. There is no situation when there is no risk. There is risk. But how much of risk are you willing to take? That is why we talk about, in legal terms, balance of convenience. You put it in your scale. And if you think that the convenience is more for you, that you can take a greater risk, you will opt for it. So, making people understand that this is convenient, this is acceptable, this is standard adopted across, these are things which probably these standards must adhere to, with keeping in mind the general standards which are there with regard to putting it in a legal framework. In terms of right, in terms of opportunity, in terms of capacity, in terms of audio altrum partem, hearing the other side, doing justice, natural justice. There are so many other standards that are to be there, but ensure that it is there, and making everybody become a participant in that, right? Any particular questions that if it is there, probably we can address that more specifically.
Actually, as a person who works in, let's say, technology-related research, I often get this question in my mind. Let's say, even if I want to work on an application as election from my area of research, I also have this question that what is legal or what is acceptable actually? Shall I work on analyzing all the political rallies and find something out? Will this be accepted by the, this theme, the meeting which we have here? Or, even though I understand that we have to leave to have more innovation and growth, we have to sometimes leave the legal aspect of it and see what happens afterwards. But we also need to know that what is acceptable, because we don't want to, waste our whole energy into, we develop something, we analyze something, we get one outcome, but it's not acceptable and we have to keep it hidden, or, it can't be used. So, what is your suggestion to, break this cycle? Somewhat legal things we want to know before we start, right?
Let's start with an assumption that the law has. The assumption that the law has is that everybody knows the law. So you cannot choose to do something against the law without knowledge that it is against the law. Yes. Right? So that's where we start with. The rest of things are that most of the research that is done, scientific research that is done, is borderline legal, illegal. Right?
Yes.
Let me put a very simple example on that. Somebody is making a new, bringing a new technology in terms of how to harness energy, right? or in a medical field in terms of finding something which is a diagnostic or for the purpose of therapeutic in nature. The border that between legitimacy and illegitimacy is very, very thin as such. So for you to be absolutely sure that this is legal and illegal, it's not possible at all. Many times the legal part or the illegal part is determined by what use are you putting your test result to.
Yes.
Is it not? Take for example your biotechnology, right? Or as simple as gene editing, right? We are all familiar with gene editing. Is gene editing to be treated as acceptable or not acceptable?
Yeah, I mean, it seems that it should not be.
Sorry?
It should not be.
Gene editing should not be possible. Should
It
not
is-
be allowed.
It is, yeah, I mean, research should be allowed, but application...
Research should be allowed, but application should not be allowed.
Yeah.
Why?
It should be regulated.
Why?
Um,
It's as simple as that. Gene editing, if it is put for a therapeutic use, for curing somebody's disease, it should be something not just allowed, it should be encouraged. But there's a flip side to it, that gene editing will be used for what we call as, what babies? There's a term for that, isn't it? Designer babies.
yeah.
Should we go for designer babies? Gene editing enables that also. Gene editing would enable therapeutic use and gene editing would enable designer babies. Should gene editing be allowed or not allowed? Can you give me a definite answer? You cannot.
Yeah.
Similarly, I cannot give a definite answer to what you asked.
Yeah. So let's say if we look at one application in election,
Sure.
suppose voter identification.
Voter identity.
And we are, suppose, we use, let's say, facial recognition and some things like
Yes.
that. And often the models the machine learning side has, let's say in deep learning, those models are quite accurate. But of course, they are not explainable. So there is some technology which is efficient in terms of accuracy, but it's not explainable.
Not explainable to a common man or an outsider.
Not even developers. We
Not
don't
even
know why.
developers. Fine.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean self-generated ones, right?
Yes. So we don't even know why, even if the model I have,
Okay,
fixed
self-evolved
some
ones.
things.
Sure.
So those things, let's say, are called deep learning models. So we don't know why it's giving this result. So there is no, I mean, of course, there is a lot of research going on to, have some explainable AI. But you see, shall we, work on it, find something which we can't
should.
say why
I
it is.
told you about two things. Sajid sir was saying as to how law can be an enabler and its disabler.
Yes.
I can translate it in another way. Law can be proactive, law can be reactive. Whether law should be proactive. Proactive is where the technology has evolved a certain distance and suddenly you feel that this can have disruptive effect on the society, law must step in. Their law has to fix the limits within which this technology has to be applied.
Yes.
However, if that limitation is going to restrict all kinds of research and all kinds of application, then that law becomes a disabler. I would prefer the law to be reactive there. Where you allow that technology to evolve over a period of time, see what the possible positives and negatives are, and apply, as I said earlier, the balance of convenience. Every technology has a positive application, negative application. Risk is there everywhere. As long as the benefits overweigh the risk, adopt it. If the risks overweigh the benefit, reject it. But this risk-benefit analysis cannot be done at a theoretical level in the beginning. Sometimes it could be done only after application and it reaches a certain level of development.
Yeah, I understand.
And so there, the law may have to wait, and then take a reactive approach.
Yeah.
Having a law right at the outset, defining what shape and direction this technology must take, will, as Sir said, will be a dampener. Because probably the kind of application it can have beyond the defined limits remains unexplored. Right?
Yeah.
So to give a definite answer whether it should be proactive or reactive, I don't have answer. The technology specific situation where it is applied will have to be the determining factor. Context will be the determining factor. That's how probably we'll have to look at it.
Thank you very much.
You're supposed to be sitting on the panel, right?
In discussion, panel discussion.
Sure.
Where would you like to take it here from? From here, where should we be going? Yes. Sai sir, Vanilla. Sai sir has not come.
Next, I would welcome Dr. Dhanraju sir to share his thoughts on the reflections. Thank you.
I don't have any specific take on the note that is prepared and circulated, but I started with UPA in the morning, so I probably end up with UP again. We discussed a lot about the legitimacy last few sessions, the legitimacy of the whole process, and who gives the legitimacy and how you get legitimized, your process is legitimized. Someone like me observing elections for the last so many years, one thing is clear. Election as such, as it is, very decentralized system in India. Election, if you go to Nirvajan Bhavan in Delhi, you have 3 commissioners, and if I'm not wrong, probably another 40, 50, and then there's a secretariat for that. And that is a system that actually conducts elections, and that particular body is not for a particular period of time, it's a continuous process. But the very exciting part of this process is, it's not those who sit in Delhi or, I know electoral officer here, actually people who are on the ground are different. I got into debates many times with usually media approaches, and all the academic discussions also. One thing I learned, the legitimacy comes when your own people, part of the process, meaning people who work with the government, people who work with the schools, colleges, as presiding officers, those who man the polling booth on that day, that gives the legitimacy. And if we had 91 crore voters, we are around 1 million, let's say, EVMs, and you have these many people, I don't know exactly, but I think that is also around 1 million people, undertaking the exercise, not only on the day, at different phases, different times. I think that gives the legitimacy. The problem with this technology would be that decentralization, I fear, sometimes become very centralized. That will be questioned. Right. Because the questionable part is, technology as I say, why UP is legitimized? I mean, in a different sense. You have competing apps in the market. Right. So will you be able to give competing apps here? I don't think so. Or maybe, we should think about it. So decentralized, centralized system is the beauty of the election process in India. It's very decentralized. I come from a family, my parents, my uncles, aunts are all teachers, professors. All of them were, from my childhood days, I remember, during the election time, they are there. Right. So we feel like a connect, a relation. Oh, they are also part of the system. Right. It's not like somebody's driving the process from Delhi. Right. The technology, as we always debated, whenever we discuss technology at any point, whether we give that touch feel, technology will be able to do that, then it could be delegitimized. The other one is, we also have a system in India, for example, a passport. Passport, all processes, that's an example everybody quotes, right? The TCS does that. And go there within few minutes, I took passport 20, 21 years back. spend their 2 days in Kochi's passport office Kendra, passport seva Kendra. Today, when I renewed it few months back, I think, I took almost like half an hour job. They give a window, like what we discussed in the morning. We will give a window, go there, do the thing, rest is done. But is it possible to replicate such kind of an exercise in election is the challenge we are going to face, right? Because passport and UPA applications are different from elections. I strongly believe they are different things. Because in these two cases, you get results immediately. Yes or no, you know. Or, I also, when I sometimes do the transaction, UPI transaction, you fail. It shows that fail. I'm okay. In the beginning, I have certain, I was little, I was not so sure what will happen to my money. If it is 50 rupees, fine, okay. Even if it goes, fine. But if it's 3,000 rupees, what will happen? But now system has developed that you don't have to worry, it will reverse to your account, right? But election, there's a problem. I think every election that when I started my career, like every election I discussed, there is a time, you cast your vote on this day. For example, Kerala, it was 45 days, right? Around 40 days. So everybody is worried, like what is happening during that time? It's not a quick result, right? I'm worried about whether EVMs. Then then you see all the videos. Oh, what is happening? What's happening? The storage. I say, is right or wrong is not the question. As a voter, sometimes I'm a little challenged. I voted, fine. Till that process, I don't know what is happening next 40 days. Somebody is going to manipulate that. So whether the technology that we are going to propose here is going to solve that issue, like by evening, I'm going to get results. Even if it is so, I think that time duration, 5 o'clock, the polling is over, 5:30, polling is over, people standing in the queue, next day you're doing it. I think there is a time we used to do that, right, in the past. And there's also, when we evolved and matured enough, I think we are taking more time to count the votes now. That's also a debatable point. So I think that is one challenge every citizen, every voter has to be convinced. What is happening that time? Everything can be rest assured till the time of polling, that is fine. But post-polling, what is going to happen? And I think this voting process is completely different from a financial transactions. It is this is something like, I give it probably a parallel example. Now Supreme Court only said, right? Don't use AI to write your judgments. I think we are almost in the same plane here. I think that's a comparable example. Okay. And again, we can argue, okay, I think I attended one of these workshops, Chief Justice of India was there a couple of years back in Kumaragam. And there is a session on how can we use AI in our court judgments and all. But as an enabler tool, it was not suggested, they were not suggesting that AI should write the judgment. But they were saying probably research could be a little more easier. You can actually find the trail of the case in a better way. It could also, some cases, not all the cases, some cases, maybe we can use AI better than human intellect. Challan and all, and there's no criminal proceeding as such. So this is a comparable note. And finally, since we discussed Switzerland thing and all, I think the whole point is, I think we should look at decentralized government more than the centralized polling issues. If I can do a system like this in Trivandrum Municipal Corporation, I'd be more than happy. Probably that will give more legitimacy than your votes to Lok Sabha. then that would be a very debatable point. We have how many 100 watts into Trivandrum Municipal Corporation. Try doing this, build the legitimacy, and we also, as a policy person, I used to work on something called Area Sabha in the past, because in India it's very funny. I think Jharkhand Chief Minister, when he won, this was 2016-17 time, his wards, his majority, the winning majority was less than the majority of the mayor. Less than the majority of the mayor of Ranchi Municipal Corporation. This was become a contentious issue. Who has got more legitimacy? Because his constituency was smaller than, because there is a direct election to Ranchi mayor. Unlike the many other parts of unlike Trivandrum Municipal Corporation, there's a direct election. So Ranchi Municipal Corporation's mayor won by some 40,000 votes, and Chief Minister of Ranbir Das, I'm referring to the Chief Minister of Jharkhand, Ranbir Das, he had only 8,000 votes majority. So so probably we should try out at the local level, because of the decentralized involvement of various institutions and individuals in today's electoral process. And that decentralization could be legitimized at the local level than at a level that you vote for MP and Lok Sabha seat. That's my take on this issue. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for all who participate in the discussions. Now let's turn our attention to next session. We are going to most anticipated segment of the day. We have a panel discussion featuring some of the brilliant minds sharing their thoughts on election technology. Let's welcome all of them. Moderating the discussion will be Dr. A. Kaushigan IAS, Chief Electoral Officer, Kerala. Sir share a deep thought-provoking perspective on how technology can be strengthening force for democracy. Those who participate are, I welcome Dr. Saji Gopinath, sir, presently Vice Chancellor of Digital University, Kerala. He played an instrumental role in converting IITMK into university focused on digital science and innovation. Prior to this, he was the CEO of Kerala Startup Mission, leading it to become one of the most important startup ecosystem in the country and also winning international accolades. Next, we have Dr. Balakrishnan, sir. He is the Director of the Center of Law and Development and an Associate Professor teaching at the National University for Advanced Legal Studies at Kochi, Kerala. Next is Dr. Gerima, Assistant Professor at IIT Palakkad. She finished her PhD from IIT Kanpur and did postdoctoral research at Chennai Mathematical Institute and Kyushu University in Japan, a gold medalist in both undergraduate and graduate level. Her research interests including multi-agent systems, game theory and mechanism design for social good, computational social choice, research allocation, algorithm. The discussion will be followed with a Q&A, and the audience is encouraged to actively participate in the discussion. Please welcome all.
So, good evening, everybody. So since morning, so we have heard quite a number of experts. We did have an expert joining us from, explaining to us about, what happens in Switzerland as well. So we have had a broad, discussion on various aspects, and of course, we had preponed the reflections part also, and now this is almost the final. We are coming to the end of today's workshop. So we will end this with a panel discussion as introduced by my colleague. So we have Saji sir and Balakrishnan sir and also Garima ma'am. So we have, all three of us, including the moderator, have, shared our thoughts for quite some time. I think we'll start with Garima ma'am, so we'll like to hear you out, and then of course, so this is a discussion, not a, one-way, delivery. So which means, participants are also expected to, we have students as well as, people from DUK, and also we have state level master trainers also with us. So I expect, some sort of an interaction so that we can fine tune our draft. So the entire idea is about fine tuning it. Before I hand it over to Garima ma'am, so one nice thing that I could pick from your, delivery was that, so democracy is all about representative decision making and mediated by legitimate representatives. So the idea of election is to bring legitimate, find those legitimate, representatives. So, for example, if you take the Kerala context, we have a legislative assembly. Not all 3.3 crore people can come over here. Of course, voters would be about 90%. The population, voters would be about, no, not 90, about 75%. 75% of the population turn out to be voters. Yeah. So those many people cannot make decisions. So from their constituencies, they, try to register their will. We capture it in the form of votes. We store it securely, and we retrieve it securely and count it also, and then decide on the mandate. And that's how we pick the representative. And they come over, and people legitimately think that their voice is being sounded here inside the legislative assembly. So if there is lack of trust in the process, then democracy goes for a toss. So it's very important that the entire process is absolutely legitimate and has public confidence. So with the adoption of technology, whether we can bring in more convenience, ensure legitimacy all the time, keep public trust intact, and do the job at a much lesser cost. So these are probably, the underlying botherations when we want to adopt technology. So this month end we will be, finalizing this particular document, and then we'll be submitting it to the ECI. So ECI will again take a look. It will have external experts. They will again vet this document, and then once it is finalized, this is going to get onto the ECI's website and also the International IDES website, where it will be available for election management bodies across the world to refer and probably adopt at least certain facets of what is presented. So over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad we are talking about elections like this. Actually, I was just going through the draft, and I have a couple of questions and maybe suggestions if everyone feels they should be there. So while going through this, let's say this third one, international case studies, I was checking which country is using which main technology theme. And some names are a bit confusing. I'm not sure what is the difference between them. They look similar. Let's say India and Brazil, they are, so for India it's written EVMs, for Brazil it's written electronic voting. So, I mean, is Brazil is also using EVMs same as India, or there is some difference, that's why the different name is, put in front of it. Maybe if we have, some more clarity over it, that will be better. Something, another one is, let's say, Germany. So it's written, main technology theme is public verifiability. So, yeah, I don't know, I'm not from, perhaps I was not able to understand what does it mean as a, technology theme. So let's say public verifiability, we want to verify who is voting, maybe, is it? Verifying the technology. Okay, yeah, public is able to verify the technology, I see. Let's say for Switzerland, controlled internet voting. So, like, what does it mean by controlled? So, I mean, you see, when I read a paper, in academia, we look at each of those, those terms which are used. What do they mean? And we don't have perhaps a dictionary to, look at and find the answers very easily. So, it will be better if we have some lines written over what does it mean by, so let's say controlled internet voting. So, or if we can write which technology actually they are using, that will be even better. Let's say for Philippines, automated counting. So how is it automated? Is it like scanning the ballot and then, counting it like that? So which technology are they using? May not be the exact, let's say, machine learning model or something, but at least as an overview, what they are using. Are they working on images, like the image of the ballot, ballot paper, and they're scanning it, and then automatically it's, just like we scan a PDF and then read out of it. So for my, I have not researched over what is inside, like how Philippines is using this. It would be better if we have, one or two lines about them. Next is, I really liked actually this step-by-step writing of this draft. Yeah, also, let's say, so I was just listening to these things, for inclusion, we can have a remote voting. So, someone can, so there are questions like if we allow people to vote from their mobile phones, there could be bugs and so many things we can't, catch those errors, there could be manipulation and all. So I'm not sure if it is going on actually, but I mean, the suggestion which I'm going to put. If not, how is it the suggestion? I think you all can please, answer this. So let's say if there are people who are, let's say, living in Kerala, and they have to, and there is some election going on, let's say in West Bengal, and there is a question that people will travel back to their hometown to vote. And that's why we want some things so that they can vote here itself. There's no travel, and all those economic effects of bad effects of it does not happen. So why don't we have a temporary, let's say, polling booth here, and let's say in 2-3 places in Kerala, let's say in Trivandrum, and so people nearby migrant people, they can just come there and vote in place of they're traveling that far, so they can travel maybe 2 hours and then reach there and vote. How is it, like, how does it sound? Is it doable? I mean, yeah, I mean, is it?
Each EVM is actually linked to a particular constituency. So suppose you have, let's say, 100 people from Bengal here, and they are belonging to, let's say, 6-7 constituencies. You need to create 6 different booths, because current model. Because in your EVM, it's only it is not interconnected,
yes,
right?
Yes,
and
yes.
that's a issue. In fact, I think the electoral, I mean, the CU has done this year one thing for people who are doing the election duty. So election duty people earlier used to do only through postal. This year, my understanding is that it has been done at the polling booth itself. right, at the polling collection station, counting station, where they will be able to vote for their in their constituencies, rather than just putting the postal vote. So that's but doing at a larger level, you really require a networked architecture. The moment it is a networked architecture, the point which you mentioned become relevant. That is, your security issues will come in. You need to use internet, then controlled internet concept will come in. So it is still not a networked model. We are actually doing a decentralized electronic method is what we are doing. And
Yes.
physically the data travel, not electronically data travel.
Yes, yes.
So the moment it is electronically data travel, you have other challenges of encryption, etc. And I think legal challenges also comes into picture in that context.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, I mean, there should be other solution than, fully traveling and then these two ends are completely, thinking about a solution and looking at its drawback that people vote remotely. There are so many drawbacks we can see. But if it is something in between, let's say, somewhat offline, somewhat online, there may be a technology can help there.
So I think, to answer your question at least partly, I think we have the system of ETPBS, electronically transmitted postal ballot system. So where, service voters who are, employed in various defense services, like they cannot leave their, they cannot leave their stations and then, come over and vote, say it's an election in West Bengal, they cannot come. So what happens is electronically the ballot is transferred. And at the other end, the commanding officer or the person responsible actually securely downloads it, and then the vote is registered and the other formalities, and the cover is also electronically transmitted. So those things are there, which has a barcode and things like that, which will see that the thing is secure. So there is a download that happens at that end. A physical copy is taken, the vote is marked, and like a postal ballot, it comes back through the postal department, and then it is received at the RO's level. So this system of electronically transmitted ballot system is there. So once it comes back here on the counting day, so there is a system of scanning that barcode. So you will understand that whether this was the one which was sent to this particular person. So that verifiability is established, and then it comes to the counting center, and this is done. But this is not done extensively. It is done only for service voters, because they have a proper chain of command, and all the service voters are properly recorded in our record. All defense personnel, we have a proper record. And also these people have an opportunity to vote through proxy voters. They can nominate someone, and these nominations are largely permanent. Once you nominate, unless they change it in between, a person nominated has died for some reason, they can nominate another person. So a service voter, serving in Kargil, can vote in West Bengal elections without leaving Kargil. So so there's a proxy voter who comes and delivers the vote, and this is a completely recognized and accepted system. So these are two ways in which people don't leave their place. But in the Kerala context, the diaspora is very large. You have people in various countries. You have people almost all over the place. Probably they're not in the moon. Otherwise, they're everywhere. So, how do you get them to vote? Through a very systematic fashion. But service voters are a different category, so that is much more manageable. But as you said, ECA is also very, keen on, adopting technology, of course, provided there is enough proof of, with the stamp of proof and acceptable. The legitimacy question which is there, that is properly answered, I think things are still open.
Recently, I don't know if you have been seeing, for gas verification, KYC, they are asking for face authentication now. Yeah. So probably technology is on a certain direction, on a path. When we reach that point where you can have a secure line wherein you can have some kind of verifiability on the other side, which is secure and legitimate, probably that can be implemented. But as of now, it has not reached there.
You can get in an airline today with your face, right?
With your face.
Yeah.
Face authentication. So face authentication is coming, but then with the AI and other aspects coming, there are other challenges which are being thrown at you. I don't know how that is going to evolve further.
Just another, one more thing to add. So I actually liked the presentation where we had the cycle, you know, the life cycle of one election, something like that. And then there it's easy for us to, you know, follow that, okay, this is before election. These are the things which the election commission is, you know, authorities here are going through. These are the actions they have. Now we can easily think of, okay, this is the technology where it can actually play a role here. So can we have something like that in the draft itself? Or is it? Oh, okay. Sorry then, yeah, my bad. Yeah, I would like to, you know, go through it. Yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you. I actually wanted to see it, but yeah, I couldn't get through. Like, where is it?
Picture may not be there, but the stages are there. So, I just have one point because it's, and especially your point about policy and which seems to be a great model because expecting legal frameworks to come in to adopt a technology is a far-fetched. And your point that it's not necessary that you should have law preceding adoption technology, rather technology going further. So, in fact, maybe in our report, we have not mentioned this. We spoke about, in the report speaking, there legal framework has to be there. We need to think about at least in a few places, I don't know whether this is universal, again. Policy law is universal.
Need not be universal because each system has its own standards in terms of you know, what is to be accepted, what is to be kept at, what has to have a statutory basis, what does. For example, polling. When we talk about polling, polling is a statutory right.
Yeah,
you are allowed to, you are recognized as a voter
because
because there is a statute which enables you to vote. So
that's correct.
That cannot be left to a policy level.
Correct.
So there are certain no-go areas for policy that statutory basis has to be there. But the rest of the things where, you know, you still want to retain that flexibility and you want to allow that evolution to still happen, you need to still have a framework within which that evolution should take place. So there you can probably have a policy kind of a situation, guideline kind of a situation. You can name it whatever you want and then you leave it open for that to evolve as well. That's what I meant there.
Yeah, so
ideally, statutory basis is perfect.
The way we looked at is, or the framework we looked at three things: feasibility, cost, and technical explainability, I think. In addition to that, we could also look at these policy
guidelines,
and
legal.
So something which can actually be done at a policy level,
right?
Something which can be done at a legal level.
Say for example,
maybe a trivial example. Say this PO's book, the
polling officers,
presiding officer's book, which converting that into a app, which has already happened, but then still they have to prepare some of the reports also.
That's right.
Some of them can actually be done at a policy level.
Also,
you need not have to do at a
because that's
legal level.
That is an administrative work.
Correct. So it actually simplifies the process substantially.
That's a procedural work, administrative work, not affecting the voters' right.
Correct. Same way when you go for these old age voters, I don't know whether you are using bio at this point of time, which actually create other sets of issues which we know, right? Now, but on the other side, micro ATMs and micro identification is a common thing because if I get a money order at my house, my postman comes with the bio, but when I have to vote in my house, I don't get a bio. So this is something which can be done at a policy level. You don't need to do at a legal level. So that's about India. Anywhere,
many processes.
That layer also, if you can put, it becomes much more applicable in an easy way.
And it enables adaptation of a newer technology without necessarily a statutory amendment.
That's correct. That's what I mean.
That is where once you make a statute, it gets crystallized. When it gets crystallized, the problem is that it is not malleable. So a newer version of technology cannot be probably adapted. Absolutely. You may still have to, like we have, if we are using all the documents and other things now, it's because there is a certain convention that is followed and nothing is there to change that convention.
So to add to the discussion, if I may, sir, you were saying about, you were talking about two things. One is policy. The other thing is, that legal wording, crafting the legislation itself in a very generic fashion so that, it is, maneuverable. In the sense, any kind of technology that comes in can fit within the framework of the, if the wording is more general, we are, will be very comfortable. If it is too specific, we say VVPAT, then that's the end of it. Till you amend it, this VVPAT cannot go out. So if generic, terms are used, so that will also, take care of our thing. So to answer this, when sir was answering about the policy question, so even in our constitution, we have these directive principles of state policy.
Yes.
So they are just policy principles. So what happens is that, so there is something like, for example, take prohibition. Some states like Gujarat go in for prohibition. Bihar goes for prohibition. We run BevCo. Tamil Nadu runs TASMAC. So there is, depending upon the context, even within the constitutional policy prescriptions, states are able to, maneuver and do what they like. So that ways, policy is quite flexible, and policy, when you give, when the policy itself crystallizes, then we go on to legislation. So, yeah. So to start with, sir, especially in terms of technology, I think we should keep it at a policy level and maneuver it, and then once things are, much more certain, we can go into legislating. Yeah. So any, if the participants, also students, would like to raise some points, we'll be happy. So this document that has been circulated, so as part of these discussions, in page number 4, we say emerging patterns from international practice. So there, if it talks about legal frameworks precede successful technology deployment, can we add one more thing? Legitimacy is non-negotiable. This is an emerging pattern from all international practices, because that's a very fundamental for the mandate to be, something which is not going before any court of law. People accept that mandate. So legitimacy, which time and again, Balakrishnan sir and also the other legal luminaries have been pointing out, if that can also be included, I think that would add value. That is just an addition. And if I may, add operational enablers and barriers. So there, in one of the enablers, I think we can also add voter education, because we ourselves as a country, we spend so much on sweep. Basically, we say voter education helps in many ways. So that part, I think, because enabler is legal framework, institutional capacity, infrastructure, cyber security, stakeholder engagement, and phased implementation. Stakeholder engagement probably would have Again, that would demand, biometric storage of these details in a decentralized fashion, because otherwise it generally takes a lot of time, to fetch from the, centralized database. That will. No, but.
The flip to that is that, in Aadhaar judgment was, it was upheld only for the reason that it is going to be used for a limited purpose. And then it cannot be put to use beyond that, because that supposed to be, not entirely inclusive. So one of the grounds on which it was considered constitutional was that it has a limited application.
That's Aadhaar by
So
you don't need to have Aadhaar by. You can actually as a part of
Probably during the voter card issue
correct.
itself,
Yeah, you need to
this
create
data has to be
exactly.
captured. Then if we have a exclusive database for election purposes, then
Yes,
probably that.
that's correct.
I think
That's right.
so, but that will, but that should have been done with the SAR process, where
Yes.
we did a complete overall of every voter. So we should wait probably for the next SAR, or, completely do a biometric capture once the EC takes a decision. So that will be a
Yeah.
humongous task, you get every voter to again, start giving their biometric. That will be a task.
But biometric identification is something which many countries have adopted. Even they may not have gone for other voting, but biometric is needed even for a paper voting. So even US and all adopt identification, biometric is required. Voting will be still be paper on paper, but identification is a biometric. And biometric identification is a very common thing. If you want to go into any country, you need to have a biometric. So that's a common thing as such. But Aadhaar, this particular limitation is there.
Sir, I had a query. When we are provided with license from the motor vehicle department, before that we have to go through certain assessments. We do have a test before obtaining the license. So when it comes to protecting our democracy, voter ID takes... Yes, no, when it comes to taking the voter ID as well, I think we need a technological space where we are able to assess our knowledge or the voter awareness before obtaining the election ID or after that, so that we get a proper awareness on what is the election process, so that we become more accountable and we can check upon the legitimacy and transparency of the conduction of elections.
Yeah, we need to.
So is there any scope for...
I think given the size of our country and the, varied geographies and the levels of, we are also, say, this state, take Kerala itself, we have particularly vulnerable tribal groups.
Okay.
So what we would like to do is that give, this right to vote, because which is constitutional,
Yes.
you give it to every citizen, and then you educate him. Instead of, telling him that if you don't know certain things about election, we will not give you a voter ID. So that will disenfranchise him.
Okay.
So that will go against the principles of inclusivity. Even if he's illiterate, he should be able to, through your sweep, you should be able to give him some information, so that with some information he goes there and votes.
Okay.
So we shouldn't, we understand your intention that, this entire process should be, much more, informed, and the entire process should be very solemn. Right decisions, voters should make right decisions, elect the right people, and all that is, of course, understood. But we have this problem of, going, non-inclusive.
Okay.
So that is a much bigger risk. Okay. And that will again not stand the scrutiny of law also. Because that is a right, once you are born, you are 18 years, past 18 years, then you will have a voting right. So that is the law of the land. So probably, but I appreciate your,
Basically,
yeah,
the
your-
problem that
your-
I've seen in my daily life is that despite the efforts of sweep, we are active members of sweep
I know.
activities.
Yeah.
So despite the efforts, there are even college students who are unaware of what a VVPAT is, what an EVM is, how it works. So there are still students, especially studying in university colleges across the state, who are unaware of what is happening throughout the election process. So that shows a significant gap in the efforts that has been undertaken.
Yeah. So in fact, just for your information, please sit down. Just for your information, in fact, Government of India, ECI, is going to come up with, a large-scale engagement with all, college students. So this is going to be, information about ECI net. They are going to do a massive campaign across all states. So we will have about we'll have some a good we have this training which is proposed for college clubs 400. So 400 people will be informed, and they will do cascading training down below, so that every person who has crossed 18 will have information about ECI net. So that sort of an effort is being taken. So let's see. We'll hope for better times to come. Yeah. Thank you
sir.
for your input.
Thank you.
Sir, anything else?
For awareness, as you said, so what I understood is there will be some students, let's say 400, and who will be, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So just to add into it, so in universities, what happens is that even for employees, so let's say there is this POSH Act or any other information which the institute wants their employees or their students to know, what they do is that before the start of the semester, we have to finish one certificate, one online certificate, which is only a 15 minutes or something a video we watch. And there is this website, Law Incubator. So they prepare some videos and some story that there is someone, this happened, and now this is what is the next step the person could take, and all those things. So we watch those videos, and then there are some questions, 4 or 5 questions. It's not so much long, just 30 minutes at max it may take to go through the video. Depending on the video, what you have learned, you just answer some of the questions, and then it will generate one certificate that we have actually done this course. And once, so to get a promotion, or for students to go into register in the next semester, they have to get this certificate done. Maybe something like that, if it is. Oh.
So I think the new gen, anyway, they are tech savvy, and it is possible. So we will take it up probably. Sharmila, I think we can suggest this to ECI also. Like ECI net, because all these college students who are 18 plus, or anyone who is trying to enroll, can go through a small video, take a test, and then that is also possible. So because we also now this central government has introduced a system called IIGOT, where there are modules, and even when we submit our performance appraisals, we are supposed to do those courses, and then that is automatically, the fetching happens, and then that becomes part of our ACR. So there are systems available. Maybe this can be tried, but only thing is that there cannot be anything like someone fails and so you don't give them we can use it for educating them. But if they are not up to the mark, or if they are not scoring, we cannot say that we will not give you a card. That is a thing. So with this, I think you wanted to say something, yeah? Please.
Yeah, I have one question for the panel actually. Like, I would like to discuss another point. That is this supply chain, this thing. In the software also, what we are using for the technology, and the hardware also. Different vendors are providing different parts of the system. for the technology. Advocate Shangamudam sir also have mentioned that during his talk, how the supply chain issues are looked upon from the policy angle. Do we have any idea, like we are looking from the security aspects only, but is there any legal aspect to it? That from which vendor will be, like who can supply something and what are the things to be done and those lines. Because what we have seen actually during the lunchtime also, we were having some discussion on the open source or the open products and the proprietary products. But what we have seen historically is these open products, although they are verifiable, closed products, some companies coming and taking the accountability. Yeah. Sure. So what we have seen is like these open products is kind of verifiable, but these closed products, some companies are taking responsibility of that. Like when Mr. Rajesh and we have actually checked the Philippines, one of the case study, we have seen that US mainly products they are using for end-to-end election process, and they must have some SLAs and something with the US that company. And they are taking the accountability that if something goes wrong, then we will take the take the responsibility. But open products, those responsibility taking things may be missing. So my question again comes back to this thing. Actually, this for the software supply chain or hardware supply chain, from the what are the things we are having, or maybe like what we can do from there.
I don't think any of us would have information on that. I don't know if Anish will have. I think our EVMs are manufactured by either Bell or ECIL, right? These are the only two public sector units which are producing. And they must have their own internal, protocols, which would have been guided by ECI and probably other technical experts. Because earlier, we had this issue like, even Huawei's, any of the devices from the Chinese firm, we used to have, look at it with some suspicion. I think now Government of India has relaxed, procurement of Chinese goods. That's just, cited as an example. So those, safety protocols, I think, would be already inbuilt with the, PSUs. But we don't have information regarding that. But as you said, I think somewhere if you think that is a relevant point to be introduced, we can always introduce in our document, so that, because there is so much geopolitics, so, if some country tries to, manipulate, our results, then of course, then there's a whole lot of other problems. So that being the case, I think such safeguards are always good. I remember your presentation, you were talking about, software safeguards, hardware safeguards, of which one is tamper-proof seals that you're talking about. So even procurement, from only trusted sources. I think those SLAs, I think the manufacturers would have, of which we don't have information, but it would be good to, put it as a point here, which I don't think is here. It's good that you raised it. I think it should be included. Because our vulnerabilities should definitely be, minimized. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anish, you would like to add anything on this? No, thank you. Right. Anish is our expert on EVMs, so he has specialized training from ECI. So we'll end the panel discussion here, and over to you. Thank you.
Respected guests, speakers and participants, thank you for all being here today. Our workshop covered a lot of important grounds, and your active participation made today's discussion deeply insightful. Thank you for wonderful interaction that happened in between. Now we warmly invite you to all join to high tea served in the corner. Thank you, everyone.
Before we move for tea, we can, I think, have a group photo here with all the participants who are here, so that, after tea we can just break away.